Chapter 3. The communications blister on the New Republic dreadnought Peregrine was something of an anachronism among modern warships, a throwback to the pre-Clone Wars design philosophy that had prevailed at the time the Peregrine and its Katana fleet sister ships had been built. Not only was the ship's entire primary antenna array located in the blister, but so were the complex and delicate encryption-decryption computers. The handful of other Katana fleet dreadnoughts still in New Republic service had had their comm blisters extensively renovated, with the encrypt-decrypt equipment moved inside into a more sheltered area between the bridge and intelligence ops. But somehow, no matter how often the renovation procedure was talked about, the Peregrine always seemed to slip through the cracks in the work schedule. Wedge Antilles had wondered about that on occasion. There was, he knew, still some bad blood between General Garm Bliss and a few of the New Republic's upper echelon, dating back to Bliss's years of running his own private war against the Empire after his falling out with Mon Mothma. Wedge had always suspected the lack of renovation on this, the General's flagship, was tied to that animosity. It wasn't until Wedge and Rogue Squadron had been permanently assigned to Bliss that he'd learned the truth. Intelligence sections, Bliss had explained to him, were crowded in public places, and having a decrypted signal piped to bridge or command room gave abundant opportunity for anyone with a modicum of skill and a surplus of curiosity to tap into the conversation. A comm blister, in contrast, was about as isolated a place as one could find aboard a warship, and having the encrypt-decrypt computer close at hand meant that the message began and ended right there. Whenever any really private transmissions were due, that was where Bliss was to be found. He and Wedge were there now, at Admiral Akbar's personal request. "I understand your concerns, General Bliss," Akbar said, his face filling the comm display, his huge eyes swiveling around to take in Wedge as well. "And I do not disagree with your assessment, but I must nevertheless turn down your request." "I strongly urge you to reconsider, Admiral," Bliss said stiffly. "I appreciate the political situation on Coruscant, but that can't be allowed to blind us to the purely military considerations here." The Mon Cal's lip tendrils seemed to stiffen. "Unfortunately, there are no longer any pure military considerations involving the Kamas issue," he rumbled. "Political and ethical questions have pervaded everything." "Unusual combination," Wedge murmured under his breath. One of Akbar's eyes swiveled briefly towards him before turning back to Bliss. "The final line of the situation is that any serious New Republic presence over Bothawui at this point would be construed as support of the Bothans against their critics." "It would be nothing of the sort," Bliss objected. "It would be a voice of calm and reason in the middle of a very dangerous flashpoint. There are 68 warships here already, all of them engaged in a 12-way glaring contest with each other. All of them ready to jump if any of the others so much as sneeze. There has got to be someone here who can mediate any problems before they collapse into all-out war." Akbar sighed, a darkly rasping sound. "I agree with you wholeheartedly, General, but the High Council and Senate are in ultimate authority here, and they have come to a different conclusion." Bliss threw a baleful glance at Wedge. "I trust you'll continue trying to change their minds." "Yes, indeed," Akbar said. "But whether I am successful or not, you will not be the one chosen for the dubious honor of mediator. President Gavrasom has already selected another task for you." "More important than keeping the peace over Bothawui?" "Far more important," Akbar assured him. "If Bothawui is the flashpoint, then it is the Kamas document which is the spark." Wedge felt a sudden premonition hit him. Could Gavrasom actually be considering? He was. "President Gavrasom has therefore concluded that the New Republic's best chance of diffusing the controversy is to obtain an intact copy of the document," Akbar continued. "To that end, you are to proceed immediately to Ord Trassi, where you will begin assembling a force for an information raid on the Imperial Ubictorate base at Yaga Minor." Wedge stole a furtive glance at Bliss. The General's expression hadn't changed, but there was just enough of a tightness in his jaw to show he was thinking along the same lines Wedge was. "With all due respect, Admiral," Bliss said, "President Gavrasom must be joking. Yaga Minor is possibly the most heavily defended system in Imperial or New Republic space. And that's just considering a straight line attack, where it doesn't matter which enemy positions come under fire. Having to keep the enemy data system intact adds 5 extra layers of difficulty to the whole operation. The President is well aware of the challenges involved, Akbar said, his voice even more gravelly than usual. I'll be honest, I don't like this any more than you do, but it has to be tried. If war breaks out over this issue, we don't have enough ships or troops to either force or maintain a peace. The entire New Republic could conceivably collapse into total civil war. Bella Bliss looked at Wedge again, turned back to the display. Yes, sir, he said. Unfortunately, I'm forced to agree with your assessment. I may also say, Akbar added, that if there's any way this can be done, you are the one who can do it. Bella Bliss smiled dryly. Thank you for your confidence, Admiral. I'll do my best. Good, Akbar said. You and your task force are to leave Bathawui immediately for Ord Trassi. I'll be quietly sending you the rest of your ships over the next 2 weeks, at which time I expect you to have a battle plan formulated and ready to go. Understood, Bella Bliss said. What about special equipment or units? Anything the New Republic can supply is yours, Akbar assured him. Tell me what you need, and I'll have it sent to you. Bella Bliss nodded. We will of course need total secrecy on this, he warned. If even a hint leaks to the Empire, what little chance we have will be gone. The secrecy will be complete, Akbar promised. I've already set a cover story in motion which should convince any Imperial spies that the ships are secretly being assembled in the outer regions of the Kothless system for the defense of Bathawui, should that become necessary. That should work, Bella Bliss said, provided they don't head to Kothless and take a look for themselves. 2 Rendili space docks have already been moved to the Kothless system, Akbar said. They'll be equipped with dummy ships carrying the proper IDs and markings for the benefit of any Imperials who happen by. Interesting, Bella Bliss cocked an eyebrow. So this isn't just some slice-of-the-moment idea Gaffersom came up with last night. This has been in the works for some time now. The Moncal nodded his massive head. The preparations were begun the day after the riot at the Combined Clans building on Bathawui, he said. With General Solo's implication in that incident, the President knew it would no longer be possible for the New Republic government to make any overt political moves without our motives coming under fire. I understand the reasoning involved, Bella Bliss said heavily. Ord Trassi it is, then. A liaison team from my office will be waiting there when you arrive, Akbar said. Good luck, General. Thank you, Admiral. Bella Bliss out. The General touched a key and the transmission ended. Which doesn't mean I entirely agree with it, he commented under his breath to the blank display as he turned to Wedge. Well, General, comments? Wedge shook his head. I was on an information raid once, back when we were trying to get data on Grand Admiral Makati out of the Buadilaz library, he said. I think the bit pushers estimated afterwards that we were about 80% successful. And that was Buadilaz, not Yaga Minor. Yes, I've read the reports on that raid, Bella Bliss said, stroking his mustache thoughtfully. This is definitely not going to be easy. Wedge grimaced. Meanwhile, Bathawui keeps collecting warships like a floodlight collects night insects. Eventually, sir, someone's going to try to take advantage of that. I agree, Bella Bliss said, which is why I asked you to come up here with me this afternoon. Oh? Wedge said, regarding him closely. Then you knew this was coming? Not the Yaga Minor raid specifically, Bella Bliss said, but I had a feeling Coruscant would turn down my request to stay here and keep order. It also occurred to me that if my task force was ordered away, as we now indeed have been, that Rogue Squadron isn't technically part of that task force. Wedge frowned. You've lost me, General. I thought we'd been permanently attached to you. To me, yes, Bella Bliss agreed, but not to my task force. It's a fine but very important technical distinction. I'll take your word for it, Wedge said, trying without success to sift confirmation of that point from his own memory of the New Republic's military regs. So what does that mean? Bella Bliss swiveled the encrypt station chair around and sat down. It means I agree with you that someone is likely to take advantage of this mess, he said, folding his hands in his lap. Possibly the shadowy vengeance organization that keeps throwing riots and demanding the Bothans pay through the snout for their part in the destruction of Kamas. Yes, Wedge said slowly as a sudden thought hit him. And since the Bothan contribution to that attack was to sabotage the Kamas planetary shields. Bella Bliss nodded. Very good. Yes, my guess is someone's going to try to take out Bathawui's shields. Wedge whistled softly. Do you think that's even possible? The Bothans are supposed to have one of the best shield systems in the galaxy. They did once, back at the height of the Empire, Bella Bliss said. Whether they've kept it up, I don't know. But of course, an enemy wouldn't have to take the entire grid down to do serious damage. Dropping the shield just over Drevstarn would be enough of a hole that you could pour a lot of turbolaser damage through. Yes, Wedge murmured. Trouble is, it wouldn't be just the Bothans who'd get hammered. That is indeed the problem, Bella Bliss agreed soberly. At last count, there were over 300 megacorporations with their headquarters on Bathawui, plus thousands of smaller companies and at least 50 pledge and commodity exchanges. Wedge nodded. It wouldn't exactly mean universal economic chaos if they were hit, but it would add a considerable degree of extra anger and resentment to the stew already heating up out there. And with all those warships trying to stare each other down overhead, it might do considerably more than just heat the stew. What do you want me to do? Bella Bliss seemed to be studying his face. I want you to go down to the surface and make sure that doesn't happen. Wedge had had a sneaking suspicion that this was the direction this conversation was going. It came as something of a shock, just the same. All by myself? He asked. Or do you think I might need the rest of Rogue Squadron too? Bella Bliss smiled. Relax, Wedge. It's not as bad as it sounds, he said. I'm not expecting you to stand in front of the Drevstarn generator dome, blaster in each hand, and hold off the 3rd Imperial heavy armor. So far, Vengeance has shown more trickery and subterfuge than brute force, and trickery and subterfuge are things a couple of clever X-Wing pilots ought to have a good chance of spotting. So the proposed scout party was up to 2 people now, Wedge noted, thereby doubling their chances of rooting out this theoretical splinter in a sandhill. Did you have anyone in particular in mind as the second clever X-Wing pilot? Of course, Bella Bliss said. Commander Horn. I see, Wedge said, between suddenly stiff lips. A search for a hidden saboteur, and Bella Bliss had immediately come up with Corran Horn. Could he somehow have deduced Corran's carefully hidden Jedi skills? Why him? Bella Bliss's eyebrows lifted slightly. Because his father-in-law is a smuggler, he said. He's bound to have a network of contacts Horn will be able to access. Ah, Wedge said, relaxing a bit. I hadn't thought about that. That's why I'm a senior general, Bella Bliss said dryly. You'd better get below and give Horn the good news. You heard Akbar. I only have a couple of weeks to pull all of this together, and I want you back with the squadron when we hit Yaga Minor. We'll do what we can, Wedge promised. You want us to take one of the Peregrine's unmarked shuttles? Bella Bliss nodded. X-Wings would be a little conspicuous. Leave your uniforms, too, but take your military IDs in case you have to pull rank on some bureaucrat. I'll let you know when I want you at Ord Trossi. Understood, Wedge said. Good, Bella Bliss said. I'm going to stay up here for a few more minutes. I can transmit to the other commanders from here as well as I can from the bridge over my office. Akbar said immediately, though, so as soon as the other ships are ready to go, we go. You'll need to be off the Peregrine before that. We will, sir, Wedge said, moving towards the door. Good luck with your battle plan, General. Bella Bliss smiled faintly. Good luck with yours. They were just hitting Bathawui's atmosphere when Corran, who'd been leaning against the side viewport looking back towards the shuttle's stern, turned around and settled himself back into his seat. They're gone, he announced. Wedge glanced at his displays. The ships of the Peregrine Task Force were indeed no longer registering. That they are, he agreed. We're on our own now. Corran shook his head. This is crazy, Wedge. And you say he specifically told you to take me? Yes, but it didn't have anything to do with your hidden talents, Wedge assured him. He thinks you'll be able to access Booster's smuggling network. Corin snorted. That might work if Booster was speaking to me these days. Wedge glanced sideways at him. What? He's not still mad about that trick we pulled with the Hoopster's prank off Skiffcrack, is he? I thought we decided they weren't carrying any contraband and let them go. No, they weren't, and yes, he is, Corin said. Clean or not, the Sifcrees decided they didn't want smugglers carrying cargoes for them and banned the Hoopster's prank forthwith from future Pomwam shipments. Wedge winced. Ouch. Doesn't mean they won't get in anyway, Corin continued with a shrug. It just means they'll have to come up with different ships or new ID camouflage or something. But it's a nuisance, and Booster hates nuisances, especially official nuisances. Wedge said. Sorry about that. Maybe Mirax will be able to calm him down. Oh, I'm sure she will, Corin said. Come to think of it, though, I'm not sure Booster even has any interest on Bathawui. The planet's got so many other smuggling groups crawling all over it that he may have decided to leave it alone. Oh, that's handy, Wedge grumbled. Hey, you're the one who wanted to get back to the exciting life of an X-Wing pilot, remember? Corin reminded him. You could have been safely flying a computer somewhere on Coruscant if you'd wanted. Wedge made a face. No thanks. Tried it, didn't like it. So you're not expecting us to find any help down there at all? There was a brief silence. That's an interesting question, Corin murmured at last, his voice sounding odd. Actually, I think I am. Wedge threw him a frown. You are what? Expecting to find help? I think so, yes, Corin said, that same strange tone in his voice. Don't ask me how or where. I think so. Let me guess, Wedge said. Jedi hunch? Corin nodded. Jedi hunch. Wedge smiled. Good, he said, already feeling better about this whole mission. In that case, we don't have anything to worry about. Well, no, Corin said slowly. I don't think I'd go so far as to say that. And that's the end of the chapter. Hope you enjoyed it. Talk to you all soon.